Hey guys, in this video, we're going to discuss why many Malaysians choose to go to Singapore for work, education, maybe retirement. Okay, so let's go ahead and explore all these things and see what will we uncover. First of all, let's talk about working in Singapore. Now, a lot of Malaysians choose to work in Singapore, of course, is the currency. But behind the currency, the kind of jobs that you can do might not be that great. It could be menial, tedious jobs. And you might not have that much of a chance to go higher in the corporate ladder. But these are all just stereotypes. So, MJ, what do you think about Malaysians choosing to go and work in Singapore? Let's start with fresh grads.
I think that there's nothing wrong, but to cut a long story short, I think going to Singapore to work is great if you want to, let's say, climb a corporate career. I think it's a good opportunity simply because of the international exposure, right? But I think if you want to start a business or something like that, that's not really the place. The market is so small, and you're better off doing it in Malaysia, lah. Right? Like, there's not many Singaporean-based unicorns, right? Like, most of the time, people get rich, then go to Singapore, rather than go to Singapore to get rich. So definitely the currency is one aspect. And so people engage in what I would call first order thinking, meaning they see something and then they react to it. Usually it's reactionary. So when they see that the currency is going up, appreciating, what happens is that they say, oh, now I need to go to Singapore to work because the currency is stronger. But they tend to forget that when the currency is stronger, typically the cost of living also becomes quite a bit stronger. And you guys can Google this, but rent prices are up like mad in Singapore. So while you do earn more, but on a dollar-to-dollar basis, I don't think you earn that much more. So you're probably saving this roughly same amount, maybe even less, being in Singapore, with, I think, less upside income growth, simply because you are non-Singaporean. I don't know if you don't know this. Not sure if you know this. In Singapore, they have this website where they actually calculate. They have this labor calculator, and it's legit, right? It's from a government website. For example, like any company, for every Malaysian, for any PRC, which is people from China, for any European or whoever that comes in and that you hire, you need to hire like X amount of Singaporeans.
Yeah.
So you can never have a situation where you have a company just all Malaysians.
Correct.
Right? And the perception is that Malaysians, because they don't have this advantage, they tend to work harder for a lot less.
Yeah. Do you think that they actually have much of a savings after that? Do you think it's worth it?
I think they definitely get savings. There's no doubt. I think if you got family members there already who allow you to live rent free, that's great.
I think usually those families who let you live rent free, eventually, there's gonna be some arguments. There's gonna be some passive aggressiveness.
I think so.
Like if you don't do the dishes, or maybe just small little things that will trigger them, and then it makes you feel like, okay, maybe I should get a space. And since you're saying that like rental prices there, it's like
it's crazy. It's up 65%, I think, over a 3 or 4 year period. Malaysia is nowhere closer.
I think for fresh grads, eventually they have to tough it out so that they get higher salary. Then only the savings make sense.
Yeah.
But for that to happen, they probably have to work like how many years?
I don't know what's your experience. I know this is more anecdotal. It's not based on data, but I don't sense like they're like people who migrate there are like super rich or have that much more wealth than a typical Malaysian Chinese.
Yeah, it's like for those Malaysians who go to Singapore, they only get rich if they come back. Richer, not rich, but they only get more well-to-do if they, come back with their savings and
it's only that much richer.
Yeah, correct. Right. It's not that much. But to pursue that, the sacrifice is that the quality of living is going to be so much more lower. You live in a shoebox.
That's true.
You don't have a car, which means, yeah, the public infrastructure, the public transportation is quite good, but there's a stop every single 5 minutes. I have a friend who told me that, I am demotivated to go out and eat. I said, why? He said, that's because the public transportation is too convenient. Meaning to say, if you want to go someplace, any place, you always have to go through stops. And it's actually not that near. So the amount of walking is way much more. So the last mile or the first mile is like a lot, Whereas compared to, let's just say you're staying in like somewhere nearby, right? If you want to go someplace and assuming that you are going someplace with your friend who has a car, they come and pick you up, park literally direct in front of a restaurant or the places that you want to go, and that's it.
Yeah. So speaking of cars, right? It's way more expensive, right, in Singapore. So, some basic finance, right? Personal finance. The amount you save is basically the amount of money you make versus the amount of money you spend. So if you look at spending alone, the top 2, maybe 3 things would be your housing, your cars, and then perhaps your food after that. Then we got children's education, stuff like that, right? So housing, for me, as you know, as you point out also, Malaysia is a win. Right?
Yeah.
1 million ringgit in Malaysia gets you a pretty... If you're outside of the city, it gets you a semi-D. But if you're inside, you still get a pretty nice terrace house at a pretty convenient location.
Correct.
1 million Sing in Singapore gets you a HDB. Right? Like you say, a box in the sky.
Yeah.
To be fair, it's slightly higher end HDB, but still HDB. Then you have to take into account the fact that rent is rising like crazy. Anecdotally, minimum, my friends are like complaining about anyway between 30 to 50% increase year on year.
Wow.
2021 to 2022 to be clear. And some are as high as 70-80%. It's crazy. So then you look at cars. Malaysia, we do have import taxes, which does raise the prices of foreign cars, but not local cars. Recently there was the news that I think the producer Axia came out with a 22K car. Right, they didn't have they did a lot of stuff, no stereo, nothing like that. Right, it's just bare minimum, which is like only 7K more than the Apple Vision.
Wow.
Apple Vision Pro. So anyway, so you get things like that in Malaysia. Yes, of course, it's just a basic car. It's a bit like Tata in India, right?
Yeah.
But in Singapore, they have this thing called COE, which is I'm not sure the full name is. Basically, it's like it behaves like an additional cost to the owner, and they can only own the car for 10 years. Malaysia, you see cars 10, 15, 20 years, right? No problem.
Yep.
But they add this COE, and sometimes the COE itself, it can be equal or close to equal than the car. So if you have like 50,000 Sing car, the COE is like 50,000. Right, so it's crazy. You can do all these car comparisons. Like it's crazy expensive.
So we often hear that people get car in Singapore. One of the reasons is
it's pure ego. It's pure
correct. It's for flexing, right?
For flexing, yeah.
So for those people who choose to go to Singapore, I think one of the things that they have to expect themselves to do is they too also need to adopt the culture of flexing.
Yeah.
In dressing and
Yeah, it's a very comparative culture. I think they compare a lot.
Yeah, and do you think that's something that is worth adopting in return of all this financial gains that you might have? Would you do it?
Personally, no. I think if I had a chance to work in Singapore for a couple of years, 2-3 years, I think I don't mind that. But I don't think I'll enjoy the lifestyle there, the people there. I think there's a lot. It's a very common criticism, right? They're very much more materialistic and they compare a lot more. So although in theory you could earn more there, but you end up just spending a lot more as well.
Or if you choose not to do that,
yeah,
you just end up locking yourself in your shoebox.
Pretty much. So give you this case, right? So one of the things that Malaysians like to do is play futsal, play badminton at night, whatever, right? So usually what happens after a game of sports, let's say you play at 9 o'clock until 11 o'clock, what happens after that?
Yeah, you definitely go to your nearby mama.
You go to your mama, there's a game on, you watch, or you just hang out with friends, drink all the way until, I'm not talking about alcohol, I'm talking about your
Just
tea
mamak
and
drink,
coffee
yeah.
or whatever. And 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, then you leave and whatever, right? To us Malaysians, it's so, it's just part of life lah. It's like,
I would say, I will add on top of it, you leave by driving back home.
yeah. So here's the thing. No such thing in Singapore.
Yeah,
This
yeah,
culture is completely not there.
Yeah,
First of all, you can't even afford a car.
Yeah,
Secondly, it's just not the culture there, right? Imagine like, oh, I just finished food, so let me take the MRT to some roti prata store. It's different, man.
Wait, I just recently watched a CNA video and they're talking about the mamak culture in Singapore. It seems like it's quite vibrant as well. People there don't go to mamak on a weekly basis?
I'm not sure.
weekday?
I mean, I could be wrong. But I do know that there's this aspect of having no car. So it's like a bit
Yeah, the no car
inconvenient.
part, it's, yeah. I can imagine Singaporeans, after they themselves having a game of futsal or whatever, yeah, they can probably walk to nearby mamak. But to go back and having to go through train,
it's different, man. It's different.
Yeah,
Here you
that
just drive and then you just, no problem. So anyway, but going back, so we need to talk about expenses, right? What is quite surprising, and I think this is where people do not do the right comparison, is people tend to compare, and I will go out on a limb by saying that you can actually earn more money in Malaysia than in Singapore. Let me tell you why. So
hot take.
there is, going back to that personal finance equation, right? There's the amount you make and the amount you spend. So we talked a little bit about the amount we spend already. Now, of course, the big one, what people assume to be the case, is always that Singapore you earn more, especially if you convert lah, right? But you have to remember that it's a two-way equation, right? So it's how much you make and how much you spend. Now, with how much you make, the next mistake people make is to compare with Malaysia at large and Singapore. And you have to remember that Singapore, if I'm not mistaken, is not even as big as Perlis. Maybe you can confirm this for me, but
Sure.
I don't think it's as big as Perlis. Right? So it's a city-state more than like a proper country, right? With land and oceans and all that. Or natural resources and stuff like that. So when you compare them both, the right way to do it is not to compare Malaysia and Singapore. It'll be better to compare KL and Singapore. So I'm not sure is
You are
Perlis-
right. You are right. Police is
Police is bigger, right?
slightly much.
Yeah, so it's not even the size of Perlis. So when you actually do a simple Google search, and I have them here, if you go to KL, you click on, yes. So the median income for KL is 6.6 thousand ringgit. Right? Yeah.
Yep.
So 6.6 thousand ringgit, right? Then when you go to Singapore's medium income,
Which is right here.
it's 5,000 Sing. So on a dollar to dollar, you actually earn more in KL terms.
Right.
Now here's where it gets interesting. Typically, the people who are always saying they want to go to Singapore and complain and all that, right, are Malaysian Chinese. And as much as we do not like to talk about it, when you break down the money equation based on earnings, based on spending, based on various things, the Chinese do out-earn the non-Chinese by quite a big margin.
Is it because mostly they work in corporate settings
Various, because they are starting businesses.
in Singapore?
No, in Malaysia.
Oh, in
Malaysian
Malaysia.
Chinese.
Oh, right.
They're starting businesses in Malaysia. They're starting, they're also doing well in the corporate sector relatively. And if you don't believe me, you can actually just look at EPF numbers. Now, we know EPF is a decent proxy for income because EPF takes away about 9 to 11% of your income every month, right? So it stands to reason if someone has more EPF, that he earns more than someone with less EPF lah.
Correct. Sounds
So
fair.
you can see here, as of December 2022, the typical Bumiputra has about 4,900 in savings. Malays has about 5.5. Indians have about 15K, and the Chinese have 45K.
That's a big difference.
Huge, huh? So I'm not saying, right, that the typical KL Chinese earns about, okay, we look at the typical, let's say the typical Malaysian in KL is earning 6.5K, right? And they have, let's say, about 10K in EPF,
Right.
right? Let's take the midpoint between India and Malaysia, right? 10K. And the Chinese have 45K. I'm not saying that the Chinese have 4 times more income. But I'm just saying, look, what if it's 12K? What if it's about 15K, let's say?
Yep.
12 to 15K. 12 to 15K in KL is way better than 5,000 Sing in Singapore.
Absolutely.
It's not even a comparison.
Yeah, without a doubt. But I think for those people who are earning about 12 to 15K, they are generally 35 and above.
Yes.
Unless you're doing sales, right?
Yes.
So let's not talk about sales. So 35 and above. But when you are much younger, I think a lot of people who go to Singapore to work are usually the ones who are in their fighting years, early years, where they're trying to gain experience. Fresh scratch to senior.
Correct. So now as a person, do you want to respond to your immediate problems or do you want to have a longer term outlook?
Right.
Because I presented these facts to you.
Yeah.
Right. And that is the typical Malaysian already earns more dollar to dollar than the typical Singaporean in KL.
Yep.
And if you're Malaysian Chinese, you can earn way more.
Correct.
Now, why that is the case is a completely separate discussion.
correct.
But the facts are, these are all government statistics, right? The typical Malaysian Chinese probably earns 12 to 15K.
Yeah, I think for those who are in their fresh grad, they will probably have to tough it out lah for their early years. Because I have a couple of fresh grad friends,
Yeah.
you know, they were just complaining to me, oh man, I'm only earning like 2.5.
Yeah.
So that is something that they just have to tough it out for a few years until they start to get good and
Yeah.
have an increment salary.
I think everybody is a bit different and there are different scenarios, right? For example, like the doctor situation in Malaysia is pretty bad. We have a big supply of doctors because everyone tells their kids, hey, be doctor. So when you have a big supply of something, then your value drops,
Yeah.
right? Unfortunately, as important as healthcare is, it is not. It still follows the rules of supply and demand, right? And if supply increases, your price will drop. So and that price is your income. So, but yeah, you're right. And I think just to add on to your point on toughening out or whatnot, in Malaysia you have a lot more options. You have more entrepreneurial flexibility.
Yep.
It's easier to probably start a business. You got a bigger market, right? And a lot of this data like EPF, all that, only captures, right, those with like stable income and official income. We know as Malaysians how many people do not declare their income.
Yeah.
And how much just money there is by Malaysians sitting in their bank account. Right? I just spoke to a guy recently who runs one of the banks which I will not name in Malaysia. The average, and that particular bank is mainly Chinese dominated. Do you know what the average FD is, fixed deposit is for that bank?
How much?
3 million ringgit.
Wow.
And this is 5 years ago data.
Crazy.
Yeah, when interest rates were a lot lower. So today it's higher. So just imagine, right? So when you really look at it and when you really adjust for all these factors, right? I just find it very difficult to say, well, I think I should go to Singapore. Now that said, like I said, you ask me to work there for 1 to 2 years, I don't mind.
Yeah, I think that's okay.
Yeah, I think it is definitely cleaner, but it's actually not that much cleaner anymore. Right? Like if you compare KL, I frequent KL a bit more nowadays. The city center.
Are you talking about cleaner in terms of like the streets
Physical,
are clean?
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But it's not that much different anymore.
It's actually way much more better. If you think back about like KL 10 years, not even 10 years, when we were in our teens,
Yeah.
you still see a lot of graffiti
Yeah.
everywhere. But now you don't see
But
it anymore.
no, actually there is. But now it's done in a tasteful manner. Like it's
Correct.
of
Part of the city, it's part of the presentation.
It's
But
part of the urban.
I'm talking about graffiti back in the day as in vandalism.
Yes, vandalism. Correct.
Yeah, so back then there were more vandalism, but today you don't see it. And yes, you are right. The city is clean. The infrastructure is great.
Yeah.
Tons of things over there.
And another thing that people tend to compare is the public transport. And I think for quite a long time, Singapore was a lot better than Malaysia when it came to public transport for various reasons, because it's always easier to plan in Singapore when it's just that plot of land. But when I take, like, let's say the MRT nowadays in Malaysia, I would even dare say, and to be fair, it's newer also, I would dare say that it's actually better.
In what sense?
It is more, even the trains are bigger in Malaysia. So there's a bit more space. But look, I like the Singaporean ones as well. Of course, they're amazing. And the Singaporean, the only thing that it has over the current Malaysian one is probably the timeliness. So the distance between each train, you get like 1 minute between each train, 2 minutes. Whereas sometimes in Malaysia, it can go up to 4. But I mean, it was 2 minutes, right?
Correct.
So, but that's personally, people will disagree, but
Yeah.
So when I think into all this account, I'm just struggling to find a reason why I would want to be in Singapore.
Yeah, at the same time, maybe we should also consider that not all people take MRT, because some of them have to take KTM, and KTM is horrible.
Oh, KTM is rubbish, yeah. Correct. So there are definitely things that Singapore is doing quite a bit better than Malaysia, but
Correct, but I think based on what you're saying, on the long term, it's actually much better for Malaysians to work in Malaysia.
yes, because again, 12 to 15K is very much possible in KL.
Correct. Build their network over the years, build their career, build their connections, and wouldn't be tough to get to that stage eventually.
Yes, and I think that try to not react to things, right? When the ringgit drops and you're like, oh, I need to work in Singapore, right? That's not a very rational way to go about things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So let us know what you think. Do you agree or disagree with us? If you have any other things that you want to let us know, or the viewers, comment down below. We'll see you guys next time.
Peace.